Now, let's look at how APA handles in-text citations when you are paraphrasing, summarizing, or synthesizing information from sources. In all three cases, you need to include the author and the year. A page number is recommended for paraphrases and summaries because it helps readers locate the exact passage, but it's not always required, so you have to always check with your instructor for their preference. So first, narrative citation. Integrate the author's name into the sentence itself. Let's look at this example. First example, according to Jones 1998, APA style is difficult for first-time learners. This example shows a standard paraphrase. Then, the second example, Lee and Chen 2021 and Smith 2020, both highlight the role of algorithm design in shaping online discourse. This example demonstrates synthesis, combining two sources in one sentence. So notice how the authors are woven naturally on the flow. In parenthetical citation, both author and year appear in parentheses at the end of the sentence. The first example, APA style is a difficult citation format for first-time learners, Jones 1998. This example is a standard paraphrase. In the second example, the impact of algorithms depends largely on design choices, Smith 2020, Lee and Shin 2021. This example shows synthesis using a parenthetical format. When citing multiple sources, list them alphabetically separated by semicolon, as appears here. So whether you use narrative or parenthetical style, the key is to give credit consistently. And when you synthesize, you demonstrate critical thinking by showing how different sources connect. Now that we understand how to cite sources with one author, let's look at a situation you will encounter frequently in your research: sources with multiple authors. APA has specific rules for how to handle this, and the rules change depending on how many authors there are. This table shows you the complete picture. Let me walk you through each row. First, two authors or sources with two authors. Look at the example, Bouzian and Ziad 2018 state in narrative citation. So, where here we have the authors are part of your sentence. You use the word and, since it is a narrative citation. Between the two names, you have to use the word and. But notice the parenthetical version, Bouzian and Ziad and 2018. In parentheses, you use the ampersand, this signal that means and. So instead of using and, you have to use the ampersand in the parenthetical citation with sources with two authors. So this is a small but important detail in the APA style. Next, sources with three authors or four or five authors, means from 3 to 5 authors. We have also here situations in relation to narrative citation and parenthetical citation. So the first time you cite a source with 3 to 5 authors, you must list all the authors' names. Look at the example. We have Dewall, Smith, and Lizorsky 2010 assert. All three names appear. But in subsequent citations of the same source, you use the first author's name followed by all. Then we have a period here. It is also important to show that this used in instead of including the other names, then followed it by the year of publication 2010 argue. So this all means in Latin and others. It means dual and others. We write it all, but we read it dual and others. This rule applies to both narrative and parenthetical citations after the first time of citing the names. Here we have the same thing, including the three names in the first time, but the same in the same case as the two authors, we have ampersand instead of and. So you have to use ampersand between or before the listing the last name, the third, the fourth, or the fifth name of the author in parenthetical citation. In subsequent also citation, you have to use the same thing as the subsequent citation in the narrative citation with 3 to 5 authors. So you have to include the first name or the first author name, then followed it by and others or all, period, then comma, then the year of publication. Finally, sources with 6 or more authors. For these sources, APA makes it simple. So use as the same as the 3 to 5 authors, all. So you have here, you have to include the first name of author, then followed it by all from the very first citation onward. Not the same thing as 3 to 5 authors. The first time you have to cite or to mention all the name of authors, then in the subsequent citation you have to mention just the first name followed it by and others or all. No, in 6 authors, from the first time you have to mention just the first name author, then followed it by all, then period, then the year of publication, then continue narrating your work. We have also the same thing in parenthetical citation. You have to include the name of the first author, then followed this by all, then period, then comma, then 1997 or the year of publication, then all this information inside or between parentheses. Now that we have covered the most common citation situations, one author, two authors, multiple authors, let's look at 2 special situations you will encounter in your research. Sources with no author and secondary sources, where you read about one author's work in another author's publication. So let's start with the first special situation, which is unknown author or sources with no identified author. Sometimes you will find an article, a web page, or a report that does not list an author. In APA style, you do not just skip the citation. Instead, you use the title in place of the author. In narrative citation, you use the full title as part of your sentence. Look at the example. The article fighting anti-trans violence 2015 states. Notice that the title is in quotation marks. Because it is an article title. The year follows in parentheses just as it would after an author's name. In parenthetical citation, you use a shortened version of the title in parentheses. Look at the example. Reports on this issue, then in parentheses, fighting anti-trans violence 2015. The shortened title uses the keywords from the full title, enough to help your reader find it in the reference list. And again, quotation marks appear around the title. Let me give you the specific rules for this situation. For article titles, use quotation marks around the title in both narrative and parenthetical citation. For book or report titles, italicize the title instead of using quotation marks. For shortened titles in parenthetical citations, use just a few keywords, enough to identify the source. Usually the first few words of the title worked well. For capitalization, capitalize major words in titles. This applies both in your sentence and in the parentheses. Now, let's move to the second special situation, which is secondary sources. What is a secondary source in this context is it is when you read about author A's work in author B's book for article, sorry. So you did not read author A's original work. You read just the author B's summary, discussion, or citation of it. So, for example, imagine you are reading here in this example. You are reading reading Johnson's book from 2012, and Johnson discusses a theory by Brown from 2007. You want to use Brown's idea, but you never actually read Brown's original work. This is a secondary source situation. So here how to cite this in APA style. Brown's theory 2007 as cited in Johnson 2012 suggested that. Notice the elements here that we have in this citation, in this kind of citation, secondary source. So you have the name of the original author, which is Brown, in your sentence. Then you include the original year, which is 2007. You add the phrase as cited in to show you did not read the original. Then you cite the source you actually read, which is Johnson 2012. This tells you reader Brown said this in 2007, but I found this information in Johnson's 2012 book. So here we have also a remark. When you mention the secondary source, you have to mention the year of publication of the original the original work. Then with as cited in Johnson, the work that you read, and the year of publication of the work of Johnson, and all of that between parentheses. Now, all right, everyone, take a look at this slide. We are talking about signal phrases. One of the most useful tools you can have when integrating sources into your writing. So what's signal phrase? Simply, it is a way to introduce someone else's idea without just dropping a quote or a fact into your paper like a brick. So it signals to your reader, hey, I'm about to bring in a source, and here is how it connects to my argument. Let's look at these examples. Each one shows a different way to use a signal phrase. As Peterson 2012 articulately states. Here the verb articulately states tells the reader that the writer admires Peterson's phrasing. The verb does extra work, it gives you a sense of tone. Then Johnson and Allen 2007 highlight that this is a neutral, clear way to introduce a paraphrase. It just says, here is what they emphasize. Then, in his writing, Dietrich 2002 argues. Allen in his writing gives a little context. It reminds us this is a sustained argument across a body of work. Then, the research compiled by McAllen and others 2015 strongly supports this argument. So this is a strong, confident signal phrase. The writer is not just presenting a quote, they are telling you how it functions in their argument. It strongly supports why they are saying. In response, Harrison 2007 offers a persuasive rebuttal. This is my favorite kind of signal phrase because it shows conversation. Harrison is responding to someone else, and the phrase persuasive rebuttal tells you the writer thinks Harrison makes a convincing counter argument. Then, now look at the last example. It's a little longer and it does something special. While Smith 2020 argues that algorithms reinforce echo chambers, Lee and Shin 2020 first offer contrasting view, demonstrating that transparent design can broaden exposure to diverse perspectives. So, this signal sentence introduces two sources and shows exactly how they relate. One argues one thing, the other offers a contrasting view. The writer isn't just saying Smith said this and Lee and Chen said that. They are synthesizing. They are creating a mini conversation right in the sentence. That's synthesis. And it's the kind of move that takes your writing from a simple report to a genuine academic argument. So we can say when you choose your signal phrase, verbs like states, argues, highlights, offers, a rebuttal, you are also subtly guiding your reader. You are telling them how to interpret the source, so pick your verbs with intention.